So, Oliver, you've been at the front of row of creativity and technology. And when did AI stop being just a hype for you and start looking like a, let's say, mentality shift, paradigm shift?
Yeah, interestingly, we have this impression because of culture that AI is new. The term AI was coined back in 1967. For the last 2 decades, we've all been interfacing quite frequently with AI through recommendation engines and automation. And the marketing industry, the entire ad tech industry has been interfacing with the technology. I think, like most people, a huge breakout moment was that delightful technology moment of experiencing ChatGPT 3. I think that was the first time where we all started to go, oh, I could see this new technology in action, or generative AI more specifically being introduced to us. And I think no one would have anticipated how quickly that's accelerated, not only in capability, in core function, and how we're thinking about it influencing search and professional services and strategy and reporting, all of these kind of professional elements, but how it's accelerated across all sectors. I think that was, as marketeers, I tend to think we're very well suited to adapt to new technology. Every new wave of innovation comes with opportunity, and marketeers are usually at the forefront of that. We are not first, but we're usually early. But for me personally, it was that technology moment. And then since then, at the time, I was building a business called Flight Story with Stephen Bartlett. And we spoke about bringing in some senior AI figures from the industry to help us shape our philosophy, our culture, and give us an educated point of view. And we brought in a wonderful mind called Mo Galdat.
I love Mo Galdat. I love him.
He's a phenomenal mind. I'll tell you, the difficult thing with Mo was whenever we would speak, we would start on, so how do you think this is going to interface with search? And we'd always end up on, we're all doomed. Like, we start, and it was always very difficult to come back and go, so ads, what are we thinking about ads?
So when I'm listening the podcast with Mo and Steve, like the 2 hours, for me it's like 5 hours, just like stopping the pod and, oh wow.
Okay. Yes.
I never thought about that. Yeah. Wow. So how was when you just like starting about, let's say, paid ads or performance or SEO, and he's moving you like a more, what was the tipping point that made you change from the paid ads to the entirely new direction?
So a couple of things. Firstly, I think in order for you to understand a topic, you need context. You need to zoom out. We all spend so much time in the weeds of our domain and our topics and our expertise. But what Mo did for me was give me a perspective about how influential, this is not a tool, this is a foundational layer of humanity. The one thing that sets us apart from everything that came before us and around us was our own intelligence. And it was actually a Sam Altman quote, maybe 4 years ago, where he described the economic model in which the world is built on. And he said there are 2 primary variables in the world. There's intelligence, human ingenuity, everything that we create, and there's energy, what it costs to produce goods and services. And instead of saying how much the world would change, he said, what do you think happens when one of those things goes to almost zero? Meaning, when the cost of intelligence is now commoditized to a point of nothing, that changes everything. Not just sectors, not just work. It changes everything. And I've had a few different technology moments along the way that really inspired me. A week ago, I was in LA and I drove a Tesla Cybertruck on self-drive mode. And having a car drive for you for the first time is very strange because it's intimidating. You're giving up control, you lose all your agency, and you come out to a T-junction and you're terrified. However, within 5 minutes, you quickly realize, actually, I don't even like driving. I like listening to music and podcasts and talking to my friends and being in the car. I don't like driving. So this thing I thought I loved, I didn't. And that was a technology moment that has been compounding over many years. And it's phenomenal. And I've had many of these experiences, and for me, I've always believed that change is this wonderful modality shift in the world, which means whenever there's a significant technology change, there's always opportunity. And sure, there are challenges and unintended consequences and difficulties, but if you go all in on change, you probably won't regret it. So that was my decision, seeing this technology moment with ChatGPT, getting some high-level exposure from leading authorities in the world, to then going on this technology journey and deciding, through my new venture co-created, to really back marketeers to do two things: build tech-enabled services, but also build technology. Because I will give you a point which actually nods to what I'm going to speak about at the conference. So I have a theory that left brains rule the world, and there will be a lot of performance marketeers. They're left brains. You're analytical, you're great with data, you're great with numbers. Think of the sectors that serve the left brain: banking, engineering, all of these services. Left brains created the most economic value, so they ruled the world. Right brains, creatives, they entertained. Right brains were the people that shaped culture. But there's a phrase that's very common. I don't know if it's common in Romania, but it is in Britain: the impoverished artist. I'm sure it's probably universal. So the poor artist, if you pursue creative arts, you're usually not going to make a lot of money. My view now, we've entered an era where computers speak in natural language. Computers speak in all language, and computers are now no longer passive, but they're active in our work. This suddenly means that right brains, in my view, have the advantages. People that know how to create, to think outside the box, people that can communicate, the people that can use words to convey meaning. These are all skills that were deeply underappreciated, and they are very prevalent in the marketing industry. So for me, I'm very excited, as someone that's spent 15 years in this business, to go, okay, now's our time. Now's the technology moment.
So do you think that the future belongs for the right brain marketers?
Yes. Unfortunately, look, the left brains are the smartest people in the room, but I believe the creatives will rule the future.
Tell me about it. Why do you think the creatives? Because the way that they are using AI, the way that they are understanding AI, or the way that, let's say, because the right brain, they are having the empathy, they are having, let's say, more critical thinking, they are having maybe a network of people, they can choose that the answer they get from AI, it's more like a directional answer, not really like an absolute answer.
So I think there's two primary reasons. One, creatives are empaths. You have to have empathy for the people receiving whatever it is your art, whether that's an ad, whether that's music, whether that's a film, whatever it is you're building. Great creatives are usually deeply empathetic. And in a world governed by computers, I think empathy can be a superpower. And then alongside that, what great creatives are good at is connecting ideas to the world around them. It's not always rational. If we're now all leveraging tools, our competitive edge is going to sit outside of the tools, right? Like everybody's using tools. So again, it's not an either or. Of course, there are going to be very tremendously successful left brains and right brains and hybrids and everything of above. But I do believe when it comes to one specific thing, which is business building, company building, I think creatives have more advantages today than they ever have. Hence why co-created built our entire business around backing creative and marketeers to build businesses, because we're making that bet.
So I'm somehow struggling between these two ideas, and maybe you can help me. Like, there, I have people that are saying that AI right now it's overrated. The way people are talking about AI is so overrated. Like, and then I have the other part that it's saying that it's underrated, and we are not even seeing 5% of how much AI can do. And now I'm a marketer between these two worlds, overrated and underrated. How should I understand and how should I, let's say, embrace like where we are right now as marketers in this AI generated world discussion where YouTube is full with everybody's a specialist in on AI, but in the same time there are people that like yourself are putting their hands in the AI technology, working with people that can, hey, let's change something around us with AI.
So I am going to be a politician, and I'm going to say, both people are correct. The reality is, undoubtedly, we are overhyping aspects of AI's influence, and we are vastly underestimating aspects of AI's impact. You know, we have a habit of doing this as humans. We tend to underestimate technology's impact in the long term, and we overestimate it in the short term. Everyone is speaking about how AI agents are transforming everything. Have you tried using and building AI agents and making them actually useful? They're not great. There are a few user cases where they're really good, but a lot of them are really shit. That doesn't mean they won't change everything, by the way. Like, those two things, those two ideas can be held true. So when I go, how is it influencing work today? Number one, small teams can do a lot more. I have a co-pilot that's smarter than me, that has more domain knowledge, that can give me answers instantly, to help me with creative, to help me with strategy, to rationalize my data, to do input. Me as a one-person generalist marketeer that leans creative, I can do a lot more. Whereas historically, I would have had to hire 5 different people with different domain expertise to filling those gaps for me. So as a generalist, I have certain advantages now. What I will say in terms of how it influences the industry, well, that means that's good news for freelancers. That's good news for lean, small agencies. Terrible news for incumbents, big organizations that are overstaffed and will need to resize because the economic models won't support it. And there's this other paradigm shift where we're all questioning the value. A production that would have cost, 100,000 euros 2 years ago can be now produced for 15,000 euros, in some cases for 2,000 euros, depending on the treatment. There is no way that the current economic system that underpins ad agencies is going to work. It doesn't make sense anymore. So I think there's systemic change that will take time to bottom out. There are smart people, small teams, agencies, freelancers that are taking advantage of this arbitrage. They're just becoming more efficient, doing more with less and making more money. So I think it's an opportunity for marketeers. And I know many mid-sized to large agencies, and they're all restructuring. They're all going through their third round of redundancies. And it's actually a big part of co-creators' mission is to go, if big companies are going to get smaller, so many exceptional professionals don't identify as entrepreneurs, but with technology today, they should. And one of the messages we want to put into the world is that an individual has more power than they ever have. A small team has more power than they ever have, not just through the vehicle of social media, the democratization of attention, but the democratization of intelligence. So now, to me, I think that's a wonderful time to start a business. And unfortunately, the uncomfortable truth in all this I'm talking about is there is no such thing as job security. You better learn how to be independent because you may be forced in the next decade. And I tell you what, entrepreneurs are not scared of AI. They're going, right, let's figure this out and build something bigger, more interesting. So I do believe everybody now, don't quit your jobs, but I do believe everyone now needs to start to pursue a level of independence and side hustles and entrepreneurship and freelance. I think it's really important for people.
So what am I hearing is that human brings, let's say, intuition, but AI brings more generative power. So my question is, what does that partnerships looks like in practice?
Okay, let me give you an analogy. And I had to talk about this a little bit in my talk. So think right now, the best piece of work that you and your team's ever produced. Just the best piece of work. Some creative work, some ad, something that you've done, some, digital product. The chances are that was not ever created by an individual. It was a team effort. Usually meant that you had someone who came up with a really good bit of insight from some data, and then someone said a passing comment, and then someone took it away and built something. It's usually part of team dynamics. Right now, we've been using AI, LLMs, video models, music models, you name it. We've been using them as passive contributors. Meaning, I ask for something, I get something back. We're entering the era of active contribution from AI, which can now emulate team dynamics. So when you think, I have an AI that's really good at copywriting or a preset, I have an AI that's actually really good at clipping YouTube clips, that's been custom built just to pick up on hooks and has been trained on all the best YouTubers of all time. Like, suddenly you end up in a world where I think people will augment their work with these very narrow, very specialized skills, and that will be the future. Smaller teams, and it will be very much a hybrid. And going back to your point around people overestimating AI, a lot of the stuff that people preach today is shit, nonsense, garbage. But the fundamentals of what I'm saying are true. So you won't find many teams that are using AI correctly. You'll find a few that have found a few novel, interesting user cases. But there are some people out there that are doing phenomenal things. I'll give you one example. We're building a business called Potentially, and the founder of that business is an engineer, so he is a left brain through and through, absolute genius. Used to work for NASA, built 2 billion of market cap of protocols, built LedgerX, Polymath, like absolute top tier entrepreneur. Left entrepreneurship for a few years and moved to Azures and bought a retreat. He's now back in the game building something with us, and he in 6 weeks wrote 200,000 lines of code. And let me put that into context for you. That is the equivalent of 6 senior engineers working full time for 18 months. And he's done that in 6 weeks. So apply that to anything we can do. I'm a big believer that if you're exceptionally talented and skilled in a domain, AI can be a superpower to you. However, it's very unforgiving to the mediocre. It's very unforgiving to the mediocre of humanity.
Do you think, now here's a hard question for myself. So I'm using AI. I'm daily using AI. For me, AI is more like...
What tools do you use?
So I'm using Claude.
Yep. For writing?
Yeah. And for checking with what ChatGPT is doing.
Okay.
So I'm not relying only on what ChatGPT is doing, and I somehow love I tried the idea on the agent mode from ChatGPT, and it's pretty good. I'm not saying that it's like the best one, but because I have the experience in marketing, I somehow get that they are not like absolute answers. Then I started using the AI mode in Figma. I like it, like how they are, let's say, generating new ideas. Not the best tool right now, but I somehow love to try it out. And then when I'm writing something, I like to put it also on ChatGPT, but also on Claude and see what's the best tool. Because from my perspective, right now, I somehow train ChatGPT being more personal, but in the same time, Claude it's more objective because I'm not giving a lot of, let's say, personal stuff about myself.
So you've got the memory structure in ChatGPT that's starting to
Exactly. Yeah.
familiarize itself with you. Claude is being the kind of editor in your life of sense
Exactly.
checking.
And see like where can I work? So, but let's say that I'm a marketer, I'm 20 years in this
Yep.
industry. If I'm not using right now AI, will I be a marketer in 5 years from now? Will I still be a marketer will I still be a marketer in 5 years if I'm not starting using AI as a normal tool for myself?
You'll be an unemployed marketeer. You may still be look, you know what, there's a lot of interesting research that's come out, and I do think about this, the kind of second order effects of all this technology. So there's a lot of research to say that our brains are atrophying. We depend on LLMs too much for routine tasks. And if you don't use certain aspects of your brain, you lose it. So there is a big part of me that worries about the diminishing skills of people in the context. You've got AI that's getting better and better incrementally, although there are some suggestions that the current architecture is limited, but that's for smarter people than me to answer. But generally going one direction very quickly, and you've got humanities going a little in another way. I think there's a bigger question about what do we want to do and where are we best placed? So I'll give you an example. I've stopped writing on LinkedIn for a while just because I've been very busy, and I used to produce a lot of content, and I've stopped a little bit because I kind of want to have a reset and focus. But another part of me is I'm fed up of seeing AI slop on LinkedIn. And my only conclusion was that I need to not use AI at all, and I just need to write. And I was having this conversation with my friend about it and said, what do you think? I think I've just got to tell personal stories and set myself apart. And that's the only way to give the human experience in this whole movement. And he said, that's good because it keeps you keeping your skills. But B, what you probably should be using your models to do is to be an editor. Ask it to say, are there any gaps in my story that would make this more effective? Do you think this is optimal for this particular platform? Can you give me 6 or 7 thought starters for a slightly different hook? So what most people are doing is they're using AI to do their first draft and then editing. And actually, I think there's probably more merit in starting with yourself and then using AI to augment and improve, much like an editor. And yes, you compromise speed, but I think that's how we inject a bit more humanity into our work. So look, I don't have all the answers. I have my experience and what I see from our teams and people around me, but fundamentally, everything I tell you today may be slightly different in a year's time. So these things are novel, they're new, our behaviors are shifting very quickly. And that's why I love this space. The fact that, I used to do a talk 9 months ago, and my opener, I did it 6 months later, and it just wasn't even relevant anymore. It was a very good opener where 90% of the room would raise their arm and be dismissive of AI. 6 months later, it's redundant. Everyone's like, yeah, you're right. I'm like, okay. Okay. So yeah, I personally think it's a really fascinating time to be a curious soul.
So your friend was right, because your friend is, let's say, educating and moving yourself to a direction where you should be more critical with your AI.
Yes.
Like you are starting with the content from your own path, but then try to look at different angle where you can
your blind
see
spots.
The different, exactly.
Your blind spots. There's a Wharton professor that said, and I love the quote, that one of the biggest reasons we make mistakes is because we don't have enough perspectives. And the reality is that AI gives us infinite perspectives. You can say to any model, I would like you to be my harshest critic. And you are this type of person. You work in a startup, you're currently a founder, give it an identity and say, point out what's wrong with my story that made you scroll past what I just wrote. Like, I'm not suggesting that's a good prompt. It may be useless. But the point being is we have to move away from the behaviors we learned through search. Search was crude keywords, vague terms, get answers, do the work, to now using AI to interrogate our work, to raise our standard. But the standard still should be yourself. I think that's the important point, because otherwise you will lose your skills. I'm a big believer being in the trenches. One of the reasons you asked me before we started talking about content creation and personal brand, and one of the reasons I do content is selfishly to promote my interests, one, but moreover, I do it to learn how to be a good marketeer. How many marketeers... It's my biggest bugbear in the industry. You go, we build the best websites in the world, and I go on your website and it's shit. What a contradiction. We're a great marketeer, but I can't get anyone to care about anything I say on the internet. Well, you're not a great marketeer, unfortunately. You work in the industry. You're not a great marketeer. So, like, a big part of me knows you better practice what you preach. And it helps keep me sharp by participating in the personal brand hype.
So before when I prepare for this conversation, here's what I've done to get my questions for yourself. So I took like 3 speeches, like 2 speeches you gave and 1 interview. I took all the transcript, and then I took your profile, and I used ChatGPT AI mode to do a profile of yourself, and then create a structured questions based on the topic I want to discuss with you, but in the same time, put yourself as a professional. So, and I get everything, like in 5 minutes, I get all the questions, and that was good. All the questions, that was good. But because, and here's the most interesting thing, because I also have a podcast, and I'm around more like 200 interviews done here in Romania. And because I have the experience on, this is like a more general questions, I won't ask Oliver about it. But based on this question, I can start another conversation. And this was like, I don't know, 40 minutes of research and just like talking with this AI assistant, if I can say that. But back in the day, this took for me like 1 week of preparation for a guest. And now I believe that you also have yourself as a trustworthy, you as a marketer, you as a human, but AI can help you scale up like your productivity,
100%.
your the way you are working it. But you need to also have the experience, you also have the time working on it. And that's what I love in yourself. That's what I love that you are doing, is that you are not just like evangelizing about AI in marketing, but you're also the kind of marketer that is talking about AI in marketing, and it's also building up tools for marketers.
100%. I will say, if you want to outsource all your work to a computer, you're doing the wrong work, by the way. Like, if your ultimate goal is to not do any of it, then you're doing the wrong thing. So, like, I genuinely love the challenge of crafting stories and content and pairing visuals with words and creating digital experiences and building. These are all things I enjoy to do. I didn't know I enjoyed to do them, but as you go through your career and you pursue a level of, if you're in the pursuit of mastery, you can grow to love these things. So look, my belief is everything you've said there couldn't be more. You couldn't have crystallized it better. The AI is a multiplier of human ingenuity and skill. If you take the average person with zero skill and you give them an LLM, that you will get the median of humanity. You'll get a basic response. And look, the floor has been raised. But if you give AI to a very competent domain expertise that learns how to interface with it to optimal effect, you can transform your work. And look, you can make choices when you transform your work. You can work less or you can do more. And both are pretty good.
So here's another question. Where do you personally draw the line between delegating to AI and keeping the word human made?
I think the human experience matters. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. Do I care if a UI pattern was made by a computer and a designer was not involved? I do not care at all. Do I care if a techno track was purely made on audio? I don't care at all. Do I care if someone was writing a love story on an acoustic guitar track and it was about the human experience? Do I care about that? Probably. So there are things in the world where the human experience matters, and there are many things where it doesn't. And I think we're going through this really interesting time where we're deciding what matters and what doesn't. To me personally, I think because AI is such a multiplier, it does a few things. It means for those with a great imagination, you now have an unlock in additional creative tools. It means for those with less resources, you now have a lot more capability to access tools and do more. I think what it actually means for the human experience is you can create a bit more space. And I run an exercise with all of my teams to let's map out how much of your week are you spending doing things you don't want to do. And let's figure out if technology can help us remove that stuff. Just let's figure it, like some of it yes, some of it no. How much, like take every boring bit in your task from expenses through to financial admin, through to probably report, like just think of any tedious task you do in your day and see, is there a technology solution? And then invest your energy in the areas, because usually where you find fulfillment and you enjoy is usually where you achieve mastery anyway. It's kind of self-fulfilling. So I don't know if I answered your question. I probably went off on a bit of a tangent, but hopefully leaves you with an interesting thought.
So no, you're right, because I'm thinking about like if an AI created that UI pattern, let's say in an app, I don't care. I'm using it. But I won't buy a book written by an AI. Like I won't go to a theater that was written by an AI.
If you know it's AI, that's the distinction, because some of your favorite authors may have written under a pseudonym and you never knew who they were. The reality is the uncanny valley, or the distinction between what is real and what's not. AI is surprisingly good at emulating the human experience. Like, so I could play you some music tracks that are fully AI generated that you would not pick up unless I told you. You'd have no idea. And music's a rich medium. You would have no idea that it isn't by an artist.
But would you go to that concert?
I wouldn't go to the concert, but I'd listen to the music. And in a concert, the experience matters. It really does. I want connection. I want to be there. Yeah. I want it to be messy and noisy and all of those factors, right?
So here's my last question, because we are discussing about AI and all this stuff, and maybe the best example I've seen the last few, let's say, months, when was Steven said that he's using AI with a tablet under his table with the podcast conversation. But I want more examples on how brands are using AI beside the generative content, copywriting, scaling up, and everything.
Okay.
Do you have any examples?
Yeah, there are a lot. So I'll give you an example how AI is being used. So I'll give you a technical answer and then I will give you a less technical answer. So on the technical side of things, I don't know if you've ever used effectively a studio board like Miro to build a workflow. Things like NA10, you have Make, you have Zapier, you have UI Path more for designers. There's all these tools and applications where you're creating and connecting APIs and models together to produce new outcomes. There are things now that are currently being built where people are building evaluation systems, meaning I build a workflow. So I go, I'm running a conference and I would like to turn all my speakers into their favorite movie poster. So suddenly the workflow could be part of your onboarding. I get an email and it says, tell us what's your track that you want to play before you come out and what's your favorite music. You could pull that into a workflow. It could then generate a prompt. It can then be refined into another prompt. It can be passed to an image model. It can be then upscaled with a magnific. It could then be passed into a video model like Nano Banana, and you could create a small trailer of me in my favorite movie trailer with a static card for me to promote. You could build that entire workflow. The problem would be that would be quite expensive to you. There's a lot of token usage and you'd at each stage, and it's very inefficient. Now people are building evaluation models that each one of those stages, it will auto recommend different models to mean that you can now do it at a lower cost, meaning, well, you don't need to use a deep research model to write a script. This one over here is more than adequate. You don't need to use Nano Banana over here because you're asking for a 9-second video and there's a Chinese model over here that does the same thing but better. So suddenly you end up in this position where you're creating not only great outcomes, but you are literally doing it at the optimal cost. And I say that's technical. That's something that's been built out in different capacities with different people. On the more light end of how brands and businesses are using it, I know people that are using general models to eliminate bad ideas or generic ideas. A lot of creative agencies basically use idea generators, use LLMs, ask questions, insert a brief, give a reference, and then they'll eliminate all the bad ideas and not interrogate it. They'll use that as a basis to eliminate what's not there. I think that's a good use of AI. I think a lot of people now are using to scale individual content. So one of our businesses built a very novel tool, but it's a newsletter generator, really simple, aggregates any theme, any category, scrapes the internet, runs all that data through a custom model that then formats it in a correct way, runs it through an image generator and a very relevant newsletters generator with no human input. You may or may not want to insert human into the loop at any of those points, but that was, a relatively simple build that means a newsletter gets generated. Is it a great newsletter? Probably not, but it's a newsletter. I'd argue that 99% of newsletters that are created aren't great anyway, so it's certainly in the upper percentile. So look, I could go day after day going technical or small user cases, but the beautiful thing is it's fragmented and interesting. The confidence that anyone listening to this should have is you are early. The things I'm talking about here are the fringe. This is the 0.1% of people that are taking advantage of AI. The rest of the world isn't making the most. So if you're curious, if you really care about your profession and you lean into this technology, there will be endless opportunities for you to either accelerate your career progression, figure out how to start a business, figure out how to create leverage in your domain or profession. There is so many things that can happen.
Oliver, about the newsletter AI, I want to know more, but this we will discuss when you will come here in Romania, because I'm interested about this. But here's my last question.
Okay.
If you have to leave our listeners with a manifesto for thriving as a creative in the AI era, what 3 principles would you give them?
Great question. Number 1, you have no excuse to look at a blank page and have no ideas. What AI is very good at is 0 to 1, and that's very hard. When you're staring at infinity, having an AI is a phenomenal jumping off point. That's 0 to 1 of the creative pro, just to spark something. You don't have an excuse. Number 2, if you can use technology and automation to remove aspects of your work and you don't fill that time with being overscheduled, create space. To be a great creative, you need space. You need time to ponder. And number 3, if you want to be a great creative, you have to consume a lot. And when I say consume, I mean read a lot, watch a lot of videos, and ask why. If you're seeing something in your social feed, try and understand why. If something's gone viral, try and understand why. Was it the hook that made you stop? Was it the topic? What, did someone leave you with a promise that you were waiting for to see it to the end? Was it the format? Ask questions of everything you see. You tend to find the best creatives are very, very curious people and lifelong learners. And their knowledge base and their domain knowledge is very varied. They'll learn about space to flowers to, trains to technology. They're very varied in their interests, more often than not.
Oliver, thank you very much. That was great. Like the conversation with you right now made me think about that I'm not using AI enough. And I thought that I'm using AI quite hard right now, but the way you presented me is somehow makes me understand that I need to also live my life as a real life, not just to be in the AI ecosystem and technology, but use this as a day-to-day tool like a fire.
100%.
That was great. That was awesome. Oliver, you're the king. Thank you very much.